We're in Exodus chapter 6 today, but I forgot to mention something yesterday. If there's questions that come up from this devotional, or maybe there's a part of the passage chapter that I don't address that you have a question about, send your questions to faithfulquestions@gmail.com. I say that it'll go right to my email, at least it should. Anyways, but that can just be kind of the central point for questions. Um, Exodus chapter 6. We left off yesterday, Exodus 5. The Israelites are upset with God, or except with Moses. Moses is upset with God. God had promised rescue, but so far his activity brought nothing but hardship. In other words, they thought they were better off before God got involved. God's fulfilling his promises, but not in the way we want or see happening. And God's response to Moses' complaint, which is understandable to a degree for sure, but God's response is emphatic. God starts going, look, this generation is going to know me in a greater way than Abraham, than Isaac, or Jacob. Those are the patriarchs. I mean, God, the nation of Israel is going to know God in a greater way than Abraham did. And while God had entered into a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, continued the covenant through them, promising the blessing of land, the blessing of descendants, blessing of being a blessing to all nations. That's God's side. And their side being circumcised as a sign of allegiance to God. The earlier patriarchs had not seen the fulfillment of these things. This generation would, or rather, this generation, as we'll see, could have. This generation was going to see deliverance from slavery, but the promise of the land, that was going to have to wait for the next. Anyways, Moses takes this message from God to the people of Israel, but they refuse. The brutality of Pharaoh crushed their spirits. Things were worse now, not better. They were afraid. But God directs Moses, you go to Pharaoh. He bypasses more of Moses' objections, commanding Moses, go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Might be a song in that. The chapter ends with a genealogy. And that seems strange to us. It's a break in the story, but the purpose of the genealogy is to show the connection of Moses and Aaron within the tribes of Israel, the descendants of Abraham, or rather specifically the descendants of Jacob, who God named Israel. But I want to use the rest of my time in this devotional focusing on the first half of verse 7. God says, I will claim you as my own people, and I will be your God. We need to connect this with the story of the Bible so far. God made humanity in relationship with him as reflections of him, image bearers within creation. But humanity broke that relationship, marred that reflection, and God was looking to restore, Genesis 3:15, and make things right and new. And this verse of God claiming Israel as his own people, being their God, fits to God's plan and purpose. In the ancient Near East worldviews, each nation, each ethnicity had its own God or gods. And here Yahweh is saying, you are my people. I will be your God. I will use you to reveal myself to the nations, because that's how the nations thought. That's how they viewed things. And so God, working through and revealing himself through Israel, would be revealing himself to the nations around. And we're going to see this theme develop not only in Exodus, but especially as we go through the rest of the Old Testament. Thought for today. What does it mean for you today to reflect on God having claimed you? If you are a follower of Jesus, you are his. He is your God. You are part of his people. You are his child. how should your life today reflect God's life, God's claim upon you? As you contemplate that, oh, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. And today would you know his peace. God bless.